So as you know, when we got Pokemon DLC, we got back a ton of new moves. Some Pokemon getting straight up new moves that they've never had before. But one of the most important moves that saw some of the biggest increased distribution was Knockoff. And today I'm going to talk about 6 Pokemon that have improved the most, specifically because they got Knockoff. If you enjoy this kind of content, of course make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We are like 80 subscribers maybe away from 4K, so if all of you right now watching, you're not subscribed yet, press that little button, we'll get it tonight. I think it's a good deal. And if you'd like, hey, join as a member. Y'all remember that little baby Pokemon live I just did? More of that to come if we get more members, so hey. All I'm saying, you like us hitting goals? Let's help us hit some goals. So, I've tried to arrange this in order of, like, biggest beneficiaries to, like, least impactful. The idea being that I want to talk about like, these 2 mods first, really, because Sneasel and Serena are genuinely a matter of being saved by Knockoff coming back, at least in my opinion. Whereas mods like Heracross, Copperajah, Goodra, Toxicroak, I think these are still going to be incredible Pokemon, whether or not they have the move, but it's still a significant benefit to them to get it back. And as per usual, it's an NU perspective, so hey, don't expect me to be talking about OU Gliscor or something, that ain't happening. And yeah, let's start with Sneasel. So, why do I say Sneasel was saved by Knockoff coming back? Well, this mod has been, I think, untiered entire. Yes, it says NFE. Sneasel has been untiered entirely this generation. Up until getting Knockoff back, where tomorrow we are going to probably see it rise at least into PU, maybe all the way into NU, although I'm unsure because we're not working with a full month of usage, working with closer to like 2.5 weeks, I believe. So I don't know if Sneasel will get enough use in NU, but I do think it is one of NU's most viable options. Because with Knockoff, this mon actually has a spammable Dark type move. And that's huge for it. Knockoff in particular with Sneasel is pretty massive, because if you look at a lot of its checks, you can look at like Colossal, even Avalugg if we want to reference something more niche. You can look down at Hariyama, you can look at, say, Earthworm, just because it's got a lot of physical bulk, Quillfish, maybe Terastallized Sandaconda. A lot of these mons rely on their item to function, or when it comes specifically to Sneasel, become a much better check when they have their item. And that's really the case when you look at Quillfish and Sandaconda, because they benefit so much from having that helmet, being able to force chip damage. So, Knockoff gives you a lot of extra utility for not only yourself, but also your team. Because if I'm able to get rid of, say, a Colossal's Boots, I mean, that mon is no longer a super functional hazard remover, for example. Or it's just not as good of a check, so maybe I'm supporting my Salazzle in the late game by getting rid of that Cole's Boots, forcing it to take some extra chip, and then putting it in range of Salazzle Sludge Bomb. And of course, when we look at SD being the best set, that's really just because Boots makes Sneasel really, really potent. I don't have to worry about hazards. I don't care about a Violite because this mon's defensive typing is so bad, I don't really think it'd be a big benefit. Whereas maybe a boosting item like Life Orb, again, it kind of comes back to residual damage when we're talking Stealth Rock. You want to be immune to that so that you can work well at every bit of the game, early, mid, and late. If I don't have Boots, well, then I'm a lot more pressured by hazards. And I'll admit, NU's hazard control, although it's plentiful, it still doesn't feel the most consistent, and oftentimes can feel like you're a bit hard-pressed to find great chances to remove them. NU still is a pretty offensive tier with the bans that we've done, and so you don't want to have to take turns to remove hazards just to support a Pokemon. It's not the end of the world, of course, and there are a lot of Pokemon that are able to run really good sets that are weak to hazards. Take, for example, Choice Band Sneasel, or even Choice Scarf Paldean Tauros, or Choice Band Paldean Tauros. You know, these are sets that don't have Boots, but are on mons kind of weak to hazards. I say Paldean Tauros, you know, it's a fire type, but not weak to rocks. The bigger point there is you're weak to every hazard. You take Spikes, you take T-Spikes, you take Stealth Rock. You know, you're using Flare Blitz for recoil, potentially. It can get racked up real quick. But one last little addendum here, just to show a different little alternative. Something I actually thought about was low kick with Terra Fight. So Terra Ice with Ice Shard's the default, because as Jolteon increasingly runs Terra Fairy for retaining Goodra coverage, but also giving you a better defensive typing, makes you a little less vulnerable to revenge killers. We see that Sneasel with Ice Shard and Terra Ice, if you get up to +2, you can very feasibly beat down Jolteon with an Ice Shard. So it is a calc that I like. What's more attainable is you get the +4. Whether I think that's attainable or not, I mean, of course, it's up to, you know, how you think Sneasel's getting 2 boosts. I would say maybe what's more important, get a little bit of chip on Jolt, and then you pick it off with +2 Terra Ice. But what I liked about Low Kick, when I was doing some calcs, one, it gives you Colossal coverage, otherwise you have to try and put it in knockoff range, which might be a little harder. But 2, Assault Vest Hariyama, you actually one-shot, which I thought was a pretty good calc. And it gives you a neutral move to hit Paldean Tauros with. That as well could be very beneficial. And I mentioned Choice Band Sneasel here. This set probably would not be very possible if it hadn't gotten back knockoff. Because in your last move, I mean, if we ignore knockoff, the other options just aren't very good. Whether it's from a coverage standpoint or just not offering you a ton. Like, you could do Terra Blast with Terra Dark, and you just got your Dark Stab that way. But having to dedicate a Terra Sterilization onto a mon that's so weak to hazards, not very good. At least, I don't think it would be, just to be able to run, like, some niche wall breaker when NU's not exactly hard-pressed for good wall breakers. And then we get to Serena. And Serena, I am willing to say, maybe not saved by knockoff, but dear God, with knockoff, it's so much better. So why would I say maybe still use that term, saved? Qwilfish is the best spiker in the tier. Qwilfish is everywhere. You are not spinning on Qwilfish very reliably if you cannot knock that helmet. Because the issue is with Intimidate, Qwilfish is pretty sturdy into Serena. And I'm just going to keep switching into you. And if you go for Rapid Spin, you're going to take rocks. And I'm threatening you with Barb Barrage. And you're probably going to have to hard switch, unless you want to U-turn and take even more helmet. Which still lets me set up another spike right as you switch out. So, it's an interaction that consistently for me, when I was trying to use Serena prior to the buff, I didn't really like. And it felt a little bit more beneficial to me if I just ran a different spiker, like, say, maybe Colossal, where I could at least burn the Qwilfish and do a bit more damage by hitting its weaker defense. Or even running, like, Frostlass and just dedicating to an all-out hyper offense team. Where, okay, I'm gonna spike up early, and I can't be spun on because I am a ghost type. And of course, I've got all these other disruption tools. Serena feels a lot more effective now because I can knock Frostlass, for example. And although I'm probably not one-shotting it because, you know, they're gonna run Sash, I at least take it down to the Sash and then force them to go through that Destiny Bond mind game stuff. And with Qwilfish and even some other foes, like, say, a Drifblim that might try and spin block, I have a much better move to hit them with. Even, like, Sandaconda, if it goes for a Terrastalize, it is nice to be able to knock that. It's nice to be able to knock Colossal if they try to go into it and force maybe the, hold on, give me a moment. The Flame Body onto you. It's nice to have a move that does more damage to Salazzle as it switches in as well. If you're running like something like this EV spread, which is very much just filler, there's a more optimal variant of this. But I defaulted to this because this is very decent for general use. It's nice to be able to still just hit it with knock, make it take hazards if it's not running a, you know, non-boot set already. I like that a lot out of Serena with knockoff, because otherwise you would have to like spin into U-turn, and while it'll still do good damage, it's not as forcing as a knockoff, you know? So I think this mod just becomes such a more functional remover by having knock, not only to actually cripple the spikers themselves, but also so that things can't spin block super safely. Because again, look at a Drifblim. Okay, well at least now I can knock you, and if I get my own rocks up, now you might want to defog versus me. Gives you move for, obviously, blasts Hoopa. Whip was already doing it. Knockoff super one-shots. So like Houndstone, which also can run a helmet, that could be good to get a knock on. Miss Magius is getting folded up like a lawn chair, as per usual. Sableye is unfortunate, but you're immune to any of the prankster stuff, at least, from it. So it's not like the end of the world. Very good mod. Now we're going to talk about mons where I think knockoff is a bit more of a luxury, but we will start with Heracross, which I think still saw a notable increase in viability. Heracross has quite a few sets where knockoff works, and I think the big thing to note here is the difference between Throat Chop and knockoff. Of course, we know knockoff is 97.5 power when you're hitting a foe with an item, whereas Throat Chop is 80 power consistently. So over 2 turns, which is where you'd probably be looking at a lot of calcs, seeing, okay, can I 2-shot this? Knockoff will be effectively stronger over those 2 turns than Throat Chop. That is huge. And of course, knockoff on the original hit as well, being able to maybe get some one-hit KOs that Throat Chop won't because it's significantly strong. That's a huge benefit to Heracross, especially with these sets like, say, Sword Stance, or if you're looking at Guts Heracross, maybe even Scarf where you need to revenge kill, which apparently it didn't even give EVs. There you go. To all my Scarf Heracross stands, I'll fix that for you. These wall breaker sets, though, or these like late game sweeper sets, definitely benefit from having that extra oomph. But even a set as simple as this does, just wanting to spike up. I mean, if I'm able to get a knock going on like a Drift Blim, maybe it's got defog. Again, it goes back to the Serena point, where now I can force maybe my opponent to have to play extra proactive with their defogging, just by forcing Rock's Chip onto their otherwise immune to Stealth Rock Pokemon. This is also, once again, generally useful because I am a physical attacker. I want to get rid of Helmet. One of the most common Pokemon to switch into Heracross has been Qwilfish, which sees exorbitant amounts of use. It will not shock me if the usage stats come out and Qwilfish is at like 20%. I think it's that good. The only thing that would make me shocked a little bit by it is because Qwilfish doesn't feel like a Laddermon, but it is that good. So it's just a very applicable move. Does a lot for any fighting type, really. But I feel Heracross it's like particularly profound with, given that you have ghost types resisting 2 stabs. Whereas maybe a Pokemon like, say, Metacham wouldn't really benefit from knockoff as much because you've got Psychic Stab always to fall back on. So you've got a way to hit most ghost types for at least neutral coverage at that point, or even super effective coverage. Copperajah comes next. Now, Raja I could even see above Heracross here. I'll talk about the 2 sets that see any use. This set, I haven't seen a ton of AV, it's more speculative, so we'll have to dig a little deep when talking there. But the standard Stealth Rock Protect Copperajah with 2 attacks has probably been the most consistent set seen since we got it in tier shifts, even talking back to the very beginning of the month before DLC came out at all, and Copper was maybe running like Earthquake here, or Superpower for opposing Copperajah / Earthworm. Knockoff is such a benefit to the set, because now I don't have to necessarily worry as much about whether or not I have a good pairing of overall coverage, so much as now I've got my stab attack that's probably doing a lot of damage to whatever's switching in, and I also have a move that I can use, and there's really not a lot of drawback to it. It makes having Protect here feel less of a detriment, because previously I'd maybe want to have Stealth Rock with 3 attacks, or even just do Protect 3 attacks, and that would be, again, to get the coverage, because otherwise there's a lot of mons that kind of can wall you. I mean, you look at Hariyama, that mon could give you issues. Opposing Raja, not really, but sometimes, I guess. That's really only an issue, though, if you've got Heat Crash here, and at that point, yeah, it's not a big... It is a big deal. But you've got Earthworm being the other target, where previously, to knock off, it's like, okay, do I run EQ, or do I run Superpower? Now I've got this move that I can always just slot in, and I'm happy about it. Even now, if we're talking about the Protect 3 attack set, I don't feel as bad if I run a coverage move here that doesn't hit everything. So if I have EQ, I'm in a great spot. Even though I don't have a move for Earthworm, I at least can still knock it and get rid of the potential leftovers or heavy-duty boots. If I have Superpower, I don't feel as bad about not having something directly for Salazzle, because I still can knock its item and force it to take all that chip. So it just gives you a lot nicer of a mid-ground move for everything that you would want it for. And we talk about Assault Vest Copperajah as well real quick. Kind of the same point here, where Knockoff gives you a move for literally everything. So if I just don't want to have to predict on a mon that's got some of the most like potent coverage out of any NU threat, you know, second only to like Goodra, if we're talking about a comparison, I can just go for Knock. Maybe I get rid of a Choice Scarf from something, maybe I get rid of a Helmet. It's probably just going to be a safe move, and that sometimes is what you want. In Pokemon, you'll get, at points, people really overthinking their plays. Because you're like, oh, well, this Mon might come in, so I should go for this. But, oh, if I let this Mon stay in front of me, it could, do X, Y, or Z to me. Well, knockoff often is a pretty... Sometimes you have to attack the threat in front of you, but if you think there's multiple switch-ins, knockoff probably is just going to make some mileage against either. And knockoff, I would also say, enables Assault Vest sets a lot more effectively. Because if we were talking pre-DLC Copperajah, these would usually be your 3 attacking moves you're considering, and it'd be like Play Rough last. And I don't know about you, but this just looks like some of the ugliest coverage ever. Admittedly, not that bad. There's not really a ton that's switching into this and being happy about it. But you would have to worry about Sandaconda, for example, continuously switching in, getting Helmet Chip on you, and potentially just resting off any damage it did, while also forcing you out. And even something like certain Appleton, I have seen take little from H-Slam, though I believe as long as you invest in attack, it should be fine. But something like an Avalugg, again, if we're talking previous metas, that's going to switch in even to Superpower. I believe you take less... Give me a moment here. Let me pause this. So yeah, I wanted to pull up the calc real quick. This is not an inspiring calc. Superpower is not doing much, but if you get Knock going on Avalugg, then you get rid of the boots. It can potentially take a Hazard Chip as it switches in. And then this is a little bit better. You're still not doing enough damage because Superpower drops your attack. But you're going to be forcing your covers out significantly more easily, and there's a lot of Pokemon that can aggressively switch in the next turn and better deal with you. So it just opens up, once again, we're talking about mons like Avalugg and Heracross for what knockoff does in the long term. Same with Sneasel. So I like it for that. Now, Goodra is a very interesting mon as well to talk about, because I don't think knockoff's necessarily the biggest ever buff to Goodra it could have gotten, but it's undeniably useful. Think about what's switching into Goodra in current NU. Umbreon's one of the mons. You've got Blissey as a generally good mon. You've got maybe Copperajah, which does get 2-shot by Fire Blast, but it's still able to switch into your Draco Meteors quite decently well. And is there any mon that I forgot there? Cryogonal's not really seen anymore. Dunsparce is actually a decent one. You've got like Assault Vest Hariyama that can switch in. Maybe even something like Assault Vest Muck, but I'm not going to talk about that. A Violite Ursaring is another one. And of course, you'll notice a lot of these mons are very item reliant. Whether it's to take your hit, because they've got a boosting item for their defenses, or whether it's just a general longevity item like Leftovers or Heavy Duty Boots. So getting rid of that opens up a lot for Goodra long term, because now my Draco damage is sticking, or it's just doing more in conjunction with entry hazards. And this also means like Assault Vest sets once again. I'm not going to put it here, but Assault Vest benefits always from having general utility moves, because that item is typically used to turn mons into this weird mixture of like tank plus utility. Fits well at least on that archetype of Pokemon. But once again, we're going to emphasize the point of this gives you a great neutralizing move versus a lot of what switches into you. Where long term you are breaking through them with Draco Meteor, you don't have to worry so much about them coming in, taking the Draco, forcing you to just waste a power point and like safely recovering off. It's now more a matter of I gotta recover off, or this Goodra's just gonna overwhelm me. And I'm gonna mention this set. This also talks about Toxic, but this is a set more feasible now, just these like purely utility Goodra sets. Works really well in a spike stacking build, of course. You get rid of any boots with knockoff, you phase with Dragon Tail, you got Protect. Don't ask me to tell you what these EVs do, because outside of this 16 speed giving you the jump on Hariyama, I looked at the calc and I couldn't find specific numbers. What I can tell you is it increases the matchup versus Copperajah. It gives you better knockoff rolls versus foes like Mismagius and Hoopa. But specifically what the defensive stats are for, or what this 8 attack is for, I couldn't find out myself. So experiment with EVs is what I will say. Just keep in mind some targets for maybe knockoff or tanking a hit from. Even like Jolteon, I don't think this was a Terrablast calc, because it wasn't really getting in range of 3-hit KOing on boosted Goodra. I guess 2-hit KOing on boosted Goodra. Or like Jolteon at +2 maybe, you know, avoiding an Oko. This wasn't really ever coming up. So it was kind of weird. Last one to talk about was Toxicroak, which I think got the smallest buff, but one worth mentioning because of the sets it enables. Like, this sort of all-out attacker Toxicroak set appreciates knockoff. Now I get rid of your boots if you got them on that otherwise stays out of 2-hit KO range. I get rid of your leftovers if you got them on that stays out of 2-hit KO range. I got a move for ghost types that I don't have to, you know, do a Sucker Punch prediction war versus to effectively break. Like, that's the most straightforward way to put it for this set. And in Scarfcroak, likes knockoff, once again, gives you a ghost type coverage move on this set, because otherwise it was like you were hitting with Ice Punch, or maybe Earthquake, depending on if we're talking about a different ghost type without Levitate. NU historically, this gen has had like Misdreavus and Haunter as the only relevant ghosts where this would hit, but now I said that as Drifloom's existent here forever. Yeah, well, you know. Point is, knockoff hits a lot of mons that maybe otherwise your Earthquake wouldn't. And hey, now it makes it so Ice Punch is actually a lot more easy to justify, because I have a move now that hits Gligar. And Gligar is at least relevant enough to where I would say coverage for it specifically is good. Earthquake still can see use, and I think on Scarfcroak especially, I would recommend it at times over Ice Punch. It really just depends on what you're trying to target. If you think picking off Gligar is worth it for your team, then run it. But otherwise, I think Earthquake's a very solid option, just so you are revenge killing Mrs. Salazzle without risking the Mon, like, being too high health to revenge kill. It's kind of why I run EQ on Scarf Passimian all the time. Yes, I could run Gunk Shot and hit anything that terastallizes into a fairy. Yes, I could run Rock Slide and have better coverage for flying types. But when I look at the overall threats in the tier that I'm looking to revenge kill, Salazzle's always at the top of that list. I want to make sure I'm KOing that Mon 100% of the time. Yeah, discluding terrors, but you get the idea. It's a very good move to have. Quillfish coverage is like a thing this gives you, but Quillfish generally it can have T-Wave, which sucks. But a lot of the time Quillfish isn't switching into Toxicroak, because if I SD versus you, you're just taking a lot of damage that turn. It doesn't feel like a very worthwhile trade. And now, shoutouts to Danny. Always give shoutouts to Danny's videos, I feel, but shoutouts to him. We call this Pandacroak. Why do we call it Pandacroak? Well, remember Pangoro. Dark fighting type. Basically, we are cosplaying as a Pangoro here. We got the Lumberry, so if I Terra into anything... Okay, I was gonna say if I Terra into a different type, then I'm no longer weak to Toxic, which is true. I just don't know what's toxicing you. But why do we run Lumberry? I mean, Wisp from Blim. So if I turn into a dark type and go for like knockoff, and somehow Drifblim lives it, maybe through its own terastallization, then if it wisps me, it's not a big deal. I just get rid of it. Maybe Sandaconda goes for Glare as a last-ditch effort. Now I don't have to worry about that. And generally, just the double dark stab boost, also very nice. Because again, talk about Drifblim. Knockoff gives you so much more power versus that when it's boosted by Terra Dark. Sucker Punch being the big one here, because now, yeah, Jolteon getting picked off. Again, another reason Terra Fairy picking up. Sucker Punch from Croak's a big issue. Knockoff now versus Blim, that's doing more. Even just Quillfish, like, more damage on that is good. So, very cool interaction. And yeah, that's kind of just the story of how Knockoff has been, not even saving all of these, but just increasing the viability. And this won't shock anyone. I don't think this... I'm not making this video to reveal some great secret truth to you about, like, hey guys, did you know this new move that no one's ever heard of and never used is actually just the best thing ever happening? No, I understand you all are smart enough to get this on your own, but I wanted to showcase the 6 months in specific that I think this, you know, general just moveset buff was the most significant to. Especially these two little guys up here. Love using these mons. I hope you all enjoyed this. Tomorrow, we do have tier shifts. So, there will be a live stream, I assume. Unless I'm too busy the whole day to do it, which I don't think I will be. We'll have a live stream to talk about the shifts. We'll probably do some team building as well, because that's what we always do. So, tune in. I would guess probably around 1 p.m. Eastern, maybe earlier. Just check around that time. And for those of you still watching as well, little shoutouts to the members. Today we have uploaded another video in our little Pokemon Rejuvenation playlist. So if that does entice you, where I basically talk about whatever the hell comes to mind during the playthrough, join as a member. Help us get closer to our goal, which is 25. So, at 25 members, you know what, this is the end of the video. Viewer retention does not matter at this point. What is exactly our member goal? 2.5 hour NU live. So hey, if 2.5 hours of NU is appealing, join as a member. Helps out the channel a lot. I hope you all had a good time. I will catch you in the next video. Peace.